Hola, I'm Claudia Romo Edelman.
And I'm Cynthia Kleinbaum-Milner.
And this is a podcast a la Latina.
The playbook to succeed being your authentic self.
Today, Sofia Colucci, Chief Marketing Officer at Molson Coors.
In this episode, you're going to learn 3 key takeaways.
Number 1, the importance of identifying yourself as a Latina because it is an asset to your company.
Number 2, we discussed the 3 R's formula for success: relationships, results, and resilience. She gave us very specific tips on how you can build each of them.
And number 3, be pragmatic when making career decisions. Pick roles based not solely on your passions, but how they can set you up for success.
This and much more in this episode of
A la Latina. Today, an incredible guest, Sofia Colucci.
Sophia is a Chief Marketing Officer at Molson Coors. She's been recognized by Campaign's US CMO 50, Crane's 40 Under 40, and Brand Innovator's Top 100 Women in Marketing. And her team's work has won multiple awards, including Effie's, Cannes, and the A&D.
It's such a great pleasure to have you here, Sophia. You're a trailblazer.
Oh, thank you.
What an honor.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Sophia, we want to start by asking you about our favorite subject today, you. What brought you to be who you are and what you do today?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm here on La Latina because I'm lucky enough to be from a family from Uruguay. So raised in Uruguay and Canada. And then I've been in the US for the last 11 years. And right now I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Molson Coors. So get to do a lot of fun work.
And you lived in Uruguay and in Canada. What was your upbringing like?
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents are from Uruguay, huge family there. So my dad's one of 13. So 40 first cousins on Papa's side. And then Mama's side is also from there too. Mm-hmm. And then, this, Latinos come in all colors and shapes and sizes. So my family Colucci is my maiden name. And so came from Uruguay family, but Mama and Papa wanted their 4 kids to be raised in Canada. Because for them, even though they had a great life in Uruguay, I think they realized that they wanted to have more opportunities for their kids.
But Mama and Papa, Uruguayos, so your upbringing, your culture, your habits.
Yeah, very much Uruguay. And I think that's part of also being raised in Canada. Canada and in geography, you learn that the US is more of a melting pot and Canada's a cultural mosaic, they like to say, and they really cherish and embrace the cultures that you come from. So when we were growing up, we grew up Uruguayos. We spoke Spanish at home. We ate dinner every night after 8 o'clock. We would have breakfast and listen to Uruguay folklore music. We would have to tell our parents' friends when, they were over at our house, do not hug and kiss people who come into the house because Canadians are not used to it. So very much a Uruguay household. And I'm happy about it because it's been hugely beneficial just having that Latin connection in my life today. But yeah, had a great upbringing. I think the thing too that I love about Canada, it's very middle class. So while Mama and Papa, well educated, they definitely had good jobs, they also wanted their kids to understand the value of hard work. So it was always be a good person, you're going to do well in school, and guess what? You're all going to have part-time jobs. So my first part-time job was working at a brake pad factory and just learning, early on the value of that hard work, which, by the way, in Uruguay, there aren't those opportunities because it's just not the way the society works that way. So I think it was really important to have that upbringing in our family.
And you came from Canada to the US?
Correct. So
I brought you here.
Yeah, I came 11 years ago. So I've been working now in marketing for 20 years exactly. So really 3 companies. First, a Canadian food company called Maple Leaf Foods, very fitting, kind of. Yeah, so it fits the stereotype. Then I went to PepsiCo. So I spent 8 years there.
And that's what moved you to the US?
That's what moved me to the US. Because basically what happened was when I was in Maple Leaf Foods, which is packaged meats and bread, I was working on bacon. My then boyfriend, Jonathan, was working on hot dogs. So it was match made in packaged meat heaven. And he's American, actually. And so he always wanted to go back to the US. So then at that point, I thought, okay, well, if I want to get to the US, it probably makes more sense for me to go work at a more globally recognized company. And PepsiCo was that. And so I actually went to PepsiCo in Toronto. And then, a few months in, I said to them, hey, at some point, I'd love to get to the US. And they kind of looked at me and they said, well, one, let's see if she's any good. And then 2, let's see if she stays with this guy. So both of those things, after a lot of hard work, and then my long distance relationship with Jonathan, because he was doing his MBA in Boston, they worked out. And, I have so much gratitude for PepsiCo because they actually transferred me over to Chicago. And then Jonathan and I met up when he graduated.
Let's talk a little bit about your experience in PepsiCo, because my understanding is that there's a lot of these global companies that can provide you with an opportunity to move from place to place, but it's not, like, how systematized is it? Like, how did you raise your hand? How did you know what to do so they would actually allow you to move?
I think you have to be very open and upfront about what you want. So it's not like in these companies, there's these established formal programs. Like, a part of it is navigating the system and making sure that you work hard, you're delivering results. You make it known that you want that opportunity. And then also, when that opportunity happens, you got to take it. You can't just, say you want those things. You actually have to do it. So it is like a combination of taking advantage of those things that are possibilities, but also having that hustle mentality and actually pushing and driving, because those things that just don't come, you also need to create them for yourself.
And what were moments or people that helped you to learn how to navigate or push you through one navigation system to the other?
I think starting as a starting point, like when I look at how I am today in my career and what brought me here, it does start at home, and it does start with my parents and specifically my mom. So my mom had 4 children, but she is an incredibly accomplished professional. So she's actually worked in international development. And so my whole youth, like, she would, work in management consulting and go to all these countries to set up sustainability projects, Peru, China, Vietnam, everywhere. And I grew up then, like, seeing a role model of a woman who was very successful, at the same time didn't necessarily do it for the money, but did it because she really got a lot out of her work, and then was able to balance having 4 children, which, when I look back on it, I don't understand how she did it. But to me, I think as a starting point, there was never a question for me about what I could eventually become, because I had that role model in my mother.
You just gave me the script that I want my daughter to say one day. Exactly. We'll record it and just, like, memorize it, play it to her when she's asleep, so that she can at some point in her life say once, like, one thing like that.
And I tell my mom, like, that I talk about you a lot. And she's very humble. My parents, like, for them, they're like, bueno, lo más importante es ser una persona buena. Like, it's like, my parents, it's like, of course, they're happy to see the success, but we always go back to, it's really important to be a good person, and I believe that in that too.
So they were your kind of board of directors when you were early in your career?
Maybe I would say they were probably, I would say my parents always said, work hard and also be a little bit pragmatic. This is one thing, and I'm going to say something controversial, but this I got from my parents and I believe in deeply. I never pursued my passions. And I will tell you, because I know that that's something that people say to young graduates or people starting their career, pursue your passions. I think that is a dangerous counsel to give if taken the wrong way. I say pursue your passions, but be pragmatic about it. And if I think about the lessons from my parents as immigrants, that was something that was really important to them. All of us, like, of course, it wasn't like, there was never any advice of go for any job and just make money. Never. But it was never go for something that you're so passionate about. No, it's do something that you find interesting, that you can have a career in, and then work really hard at it. And so that was, if I think back to the advice that my mom gave me from the get-go, that was it. And if I think back to even how I started my career in marketing. I was marketing bacon. There's nothing too sexy about it, but I worked very hard and I found it interesting. And that opportunity turned into something else and turned into something else. And then 20 years later, our team just wrapped up filming a Super Bowl commercial. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd get here. But I think it's important to also set a level of pragmatism with young professionals to say, yes, you should pursue something that you're interested in, but also don't expect that you're going to be so passionate about it. The passion will probably come from the hard work and from the impact that you can make and the feeling of achievement. And I know it's a little bit different than the typical advice that's given, but it's something that I actually, for me, is very important.
You know, my grandfather used to say, similar to what your parents were telling you, that you could follow whatever you thought you were good at and you could succeed at, but you always had to make a living out of it or make a business out of it.
Totally.
So he had 5 kids, and 2 of them are dentists, but they're dentists that they don't only practice being a dentist, but they created like clinics of dentists.
Yeah.
And my uncle, who's a theater now producer, he started his career as an actor. And then his dad told him so much, you have to make a living out of this, that then he left acting, but still wanted to stay in the industry. And now he's a theater producer. So,
and I mean, I want to be clear. I'm not telling people to go and pursue something that they don't like just because it's high paying. Not at all. So for instance, I was fortunate when I started at Maple Leaf Foods, I started in this management trainee program. And for 3 years, you work in 3 different parts of the company. So I was in a sales role, which I loved. Then I went to this finance role, which was risk management, working with options and futures. I was terrible at it. And I hated it. And had that been my real job and not this rotation program, I probably would have been fired. But I say this, I was able to learn very early in my career what I didn't like and what I wasn't good at. And so then when I got to marketing, even though it was like marketing something like packaged meat, I suddenly loved it because it was a good fit for my skill set and it was something I could make a career out of. So again, it's not about like just going for the money, but it is about being reasonable with how you pursue your career.
Those training programs we haven't talked a lot about, but I think it's an excellent way to start your career if a company is willing to invest in you and give you enough opportunities to try the waters. It's much better than having to quit a job and go to another job.
For sure. And also, too, the good thing with these training programs and like General Electric, GM, like a lot of these companies have them, is they give you a good sense of the different parts of the company and how things run. And so if I look at my career, I've only really worked at 3 companies now. And so, for instance, from Maple Leaf Foods to PepsiCo and now Molson Coors, there is a big part of navigating the system and figuring out how to leverage relationships with different stakeholders, with salespeople, and having that early on in my career was a huge asset.
I want to ask about the hot dog.
Oh yeah, of course.
And how his role in this, because you and I were talking before, how much at some point when you had to like wonder about your Latinidad, he was instrumental. So tell the story about you as a Latina and then the impact of your husband.
Totally. And my husband's amazing. And he's always just a great kind of sounding board on things. So it was interesting. So I grew up in Canada and obviously to parents that were from Uruguay. And look, when we moved to Canada, like it was reversed. Like I spoke English with an accent. Now, because I've been here for so long, I speak Spanish with an accent, right? And so over the years, like because Canada has so many diverse nationalities, there isn't the same kind of I guess, like thing that happens here where you go into a company and you check what box you are. So suddenly when I got to the US and I remember my HR person said, like, why didn't you check the Latina box? And I said to her, well, you know, I've never really felt that I was discriminated because I have blue eyes and I have pale skin and I mean, fake blonde hair, but yes, like blonde hair. And my dad, on the other hand, like he's very dark and he speaks English with a very thick accent. He's Latino, but am I really? And it was interesting because I talked about this with Jonathan, who did grow up in the US. And he said, Sophia, like, first of all, you are Latina, like your family's from there, you speak Spanish, culturally you are. He goes, but more important, you are an asset to the organization because you're bringing a diverse point of view and you can actually relate and connect with those consumers. And especially that's important in marketing as a leader in an organization. And so all of a sudden it made me realize like it is a big asset for these organizations to have these diverse perspectives. And even though I might not look, you know, like what people would typically consider a Latino person to be, I am just as much. So it was a good conversation with Jonathan that we had.
And, you know, like I hate to say it, but bacon and hot dog, perfect match, right?
Oh,
like
totally.
there's no hot dog without bacon. But look, I think that overall, we see that a lot. We see that there's an incredible amount of Hispanics, Latinas, Latinos that do not claim their Latinidad because they're afraid they're not 100% Latinos. They're
Totally.
not, I don't have the looks, I don't have the language, I don't have the 100%. And it takes moments like listening to you or people like Jonathan saying, claim it for us to do it. But this is happening every time more. Yeah. Latinos are every time more unified, every time more proud, every time more language, every time more values, every time less assimilation, every time understanding more that there's not one Latino look because we're all in this, put together all of a sudden like that. So as a marketer, but also as a mother, this might be quite interesting for you guys in a moment where a lot of your growth depends on your own community.
100%. And look, and we were talking about it earlier, like it has been a huge advantage that I didn't really think about before. Like one, I just even think from an organization perspective, like there are a lot of Latinos at Molson Coors and they do want to speak to different leaders. And for them to see that there is a Latina who sits in the C-suite who can support them, like you become unofficial mentors and coaches to different people in the organization. The second thing, and we were talking about it a little bit earlier, it's just like being able to connect and actually like be an asset for the organization. We work in the beverage business and marketing where you can imagine, like we're constantly talking to different potential partners, celebrities. There was a situation where we went with a few people in our C-suite to meet with a potential partner who's quite well known. And it turned out that the entire thing had to be done in Spanish. And, I didn't know that going in. And of course I could do it. Yeah. But what was actually interesting about it was less about the Spanish. It was more that when I started talking to this person, the first thing I did, because I was trying to get to know them a little bit more, the first thing I did was ask about their family. Yeah. Because it just felt like the natural thing to do. And automatically, like we had a connection, I felt at ease. And honestly, I was just more comfortable asking that. And by the way, sometimes people think that I'm very intrusive because I ask people all these questions about their personal life. But then I've realized that's just like a thing Latinos do. And it was funny because I told my parents about it. And my mom was like, bueno, eso es lo que se hace. Hablar de la familia. That's what you do. You talk about your family. And it was funny because after that meeting, my CEO said to me, he goes, wow, you should have been there because you're our CMO, but my goodness, you're also a Latina CMO. Like we didn't just put a random Latina into that meeting, you were there. And that was kind of eye-opening for me because it does make you realize like the magnitude of it and the importance of it. And so I'm very grateful for that.
And when your boss give you that feedback, right? Like it is great to be yourself, identify as Latina, claim it and so on. What do you think are the superpowers that come from that background that you bring to the table? Because you said you only have 3 companies, but you're the youngest interviewer that we have had, like the youngest guest. So I think that you have a bright future, and it's such an honor to have you as.
Probably my biggest superpower is more that I have a lot more to learn, and that's just been something that there is that learning mindset that you have. And I think it does come a little bit from being an immigrant. I think one of the things that I always reflect on is leaving Uruguay and coming to Canada when I was in 3rd grade. And I talk about this with my sons after. And I remember being the immigrant kid and feeling left out. And then over the years, teachers would always ask me to welcome whatever new kid because I think I had this like deep empathy for making people feel included. I think because I came from somewhere else. And that stuck with me. I'm a very sensitive person. And I think that definitely comes from being an immigrant and being a Latino. And I think as a leader, what I've tried to do with that is, we were in a group a couple of weeks ago with very high-powered agency leaders, the marketing leadership team, the people who report into me. In those situations, what I really like to do is make sure that everyone has a voice and everyone physically and literally has a seat at the table. And I think that like over the years, I've realized like that kind of ability to be inclusive has been very helpful for me because as a leader, I often don't have all the answers. Like I actually say, like I'm never the smartest person in the room, but what I try to do is really bring out knowledge and bring out ideas from other people and find a way to make things happen with them. And I think that was coming from Uruguay and having that kind of learning at an early age of being inclusive has definitely helped.
So you moved to Canada. You felt like you were an immigrant in Canada, and then you came to the U.S. and you also felt like you're an immigrant.
Yes, I actually did. That's 100%, because when I came to PepsiCo, so I was a marketing manager in PepsiCo in Canada, and they transferred me to PepsiCo Chicago as a senior marketing manager. And all of a sudden, I had these people reporting to me who were Harvard MBAs, Kellogg MBAs. I had an undergrad from a school that no one had heard of. Mm-hmm. So I did. I felt, like I felt, and I talk about it, and it could be twisted, but I'll say it. I had imposter syndrome, because all of a sudden it was daunting to have these people reporting to you who come from all these like really accomplished like backgrounds. And so that was something for me to try to figure out how I could get out of my own head and figure out how I could add value and find my own strength and not let that make me feel insecure.
So how do you do it? Because in these conversations, you were so humble, talking about how your superpower is actually being humble, growing, learning. Now you're talking about the imposter syndrome, but yet you are very young.
I mean, look, like, here's what I would say. I think some of the things that have worked is going back to the superpowers that come from being Latina is, I'm a very relationship-driven person. I'm a very social person. I love to connect with people. Like, I'm not afraid to hug people. And like in companies like PepsiCo, like Molson Coors, I remember when I first got to PepsiCo, my head of HR, he said, there's two things that are going to make you successful at Pepsi, the two R's, relationships and results. So you need to be a person who can have strong relationships and then also be very results driven. And look, like, while I definitely recognize I need to learn, I recognize the importance of bringing the best out of people, throughout my whole career, like, I have worked my butt off in terms of, I don't know if I say I'm very driven, but I have always had this like push and this drive, because I like to do things well, and there was a certain level of like, this like feeling of accomplishment of being able to get these things done. And then, working in a field like marketing, where it is a lot about collaboration, relationships. When I was growing up, the things that I got involved in, yes, I was into sports, but you know what I was doing in high school? I was doing student council. Like, I was doing those things that required like organization and leading other people. Like, I'll never forget my mom driving me to a student council meeting and seeing an agenda. And she said, Sophia, like, this is something that, most people don't learn about until like much later in life. And you're 15 years old and you're learning how to do this. And all of those things have served me. So so I think like there is a certain element of, there was a natural kind of like desire to be in organization and leadership roles that certainly shaped me into who I am today.
I want to ask you about I like the R&R. It's not rest and recovery, it's relationship and results, but I like it even more if we can do it at like a la Latina results.
Yeah.
What are the results that come from your strengths as Latina that you mentioned? Humble, learning, relationship, also sensitive and very acute to be inclusive. So what if you would be the CEO of a company and you say like those values bring what? What are the results that like that are brought by simply being able to be yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great push. And so if I think about myself as a leader with those qualities, like, you get to a point in your career, especially as you continue to move up or you're leading teams, it's not what you know, it's more how you do it and how you inspire people and how people follow you, right? And by the way, I've learned this over time. There's been times in my career where I've been so driven, I haven't brought people along as well. But over the years, like, I think what I've really tried to hone in is that kind of sensitivity and that empathy that then makes people actually want to be on your team and they want to work hard and they want to like, give it their all. And look, like, as a leader, the most important thing is having people on your team who are happy working on your team and who want to follow you and who want to actually, like, you set a vision and you set a strategy and they get on board and they want to feel like they're a part of it, and I think like one of the things that I'm very vulnerable and pretty open. So one of the things when I was younger that I would get told is I'm too emotional, and we've talked, I'm too emotional. And look, like, I remember I would get red, like, in an instant. This is where the pale skin, like, doesn't help. Or I I could cry easily, right? Over the years, I found techniques to manage that. But at the same time, look, like the amount of people that have cried in my office, and I just like for other things, and I just say, I don't care. You can cry all you want, it's fine. And look, like even as a leader in the last year, in the role I've been in, I've had some tough situations. And I remember being at a town hall with hundreds of people on my team and just I could feel the tears. Or even, like late last year, I was filming Super Bowl, which was really fun. But we were in the midst of some very hard decisions in terms of like, giving businesses to different agency partners. And the problem is because I care so much, it was like tearing me up inside. And I remember I was with some of the people on my team and they didn't know all the details or who was going to get it, but they asked how it was going. And look, like we were at this point, like 5 days into filming, so we were all very tired. But I just broke down because it pained me so much. And a part of me was a bit embarrassed initially, thinking, oh God, they just saw me cry. And then I thought, who cares? I'd rather them know I'm a human being and know that I care. And I think it's like a little bit like being open and being okay with people like seeing you as a regular human being. And I would rather that because then it allows them that freedom to do the same.
So I'd like to modify your framework or maybe add to your framework. You said R&R, relationships and results.
And by the way, that's not my framework. That was, the VP of HR for PepsiCo.
But now we're going to have a 3 Rs.
All right.
Because you just spoke about resilience. That's the third R.
Absolutely.
And you said, I have my techniques basically to be resilient, but you didn't give us the techniques. Can you share your techniques to be resilient?
For sure. So there's a few things that I've tried to do, and I haven't perfected it. But, this has come from years of being in tough situations. So in those moments, and then throughout my career, I've had ups and downs. There's certain things that I've done. One thing I remember a teacher taught me, this great teacher, Mr. LePage, he's like, 10 years from now, is it really going to matter? And I know that sounds funny, but I always say this to my teams, 10 years from now, will anyone care? And it's more a little bit just to give perspective. Does it really matter that much?
Yeah.
That's one piece of advice. The second thing that I try to do is, and this is one of the things that is a very Uruguayo saying is, tranquilo, like take a breath, tranquilo. And I always try to do that. And I say, okay, tranquila, focus on one thing at a time. Because a lot of times in situations, we can get really overwhelmed and we can think of the worst case scenario. And one of the things I always try to tell my teams and like these crisis management things is break things out into steps and focus on one step at a time. And, as these things happen, once you accomplish one of those little steps, all of a sudden you get a sense of confidence. And then you get another step and another step. And then all of those things you were worrying about start to dissipate a little bit. So those are some of the techniques I've tried to do. I'll learn more over time, but they've certainly helped.
I think that part of what we try to do with the podcast is to flip the script.
Yeah.
To make sure that people understand that being social is a positive for a corporation, not a negative. How through empathy and vulnerability, you generate trust, create stronger teams that want to work harder, that are able to navigate through things. But the same that applies to people applies to the consumer, that there's a change out there. There's more and more the Latino power. How do you see that as in your area of responsibility? What do you see that is changing? And what script is being flipped by the minute of Latinos?
For sure. I mean, I think there's a lot of myths or scripts that have to be flipped. I think as a starting point, we used to talk about attracting Latino consumers as our DEI efforts. And that's ridiculous. Latinos, it shouldn't be a DEI effort. Now, to be clear, we do support, Hispanic student scholarships, all of those things. But we do that across for many different groups. That is not marketing to Latinos. The flipping of the script is saying, hey, Latinos are actually the most important growing consumer segment, and in fact will be. They're no longer the multicultural segment. This is the American consumer now. So how do we think about not just attracting them in a segmented way, but they are part of our full-on consumer targeting that we do. So that's like one piece of it. The second piece of it is, I think in the past we would think about having our, American program, and then we'd have something specific for Latinos. Now we need to be like, no, what are those universal insights that apply to Latino consumers, American consumers, people who grew up here, and then figuring out actual ways to bring them to life that are relevant. So for instance, like a couple of years ago, one of the things that we decided to do was, on top of creating a platform that made sense on Miller Lite for all consumers, specifically Latinos, how do we then bring in partnerships that resonate with them? So we partnered up with J Balvin, Colombian reggaeton artists. Honestly, going back to it, like, had I not pushed for that, being in the role I'm in, I don't think it would have happened. But I think it was having people on the team who are actually, Latinos who are going to say, no, it's important for us, for our consumers to see themselves in our products. And so it's just about really changing and reframing the way we're looking at things.
And is there any insight of the other way around, that Latino insights that spill over to the general market? I mean, like, Americans love our food, our music. Like, there's more tortillas sold than bread, and there's more salsa sold than ketchup. There's a Taco Tuesday, not a Pizza Friday or something like that. Like what?
Without a doubt, actually, like, that's a great example. One of our most successful products that we've had recently, we were just talking about it, is we have a Topo Chico spiked seltzer. And so this is a partnership we have with Coca-Cola, which actually owns the Topo Chico mineral water. And 3 years ago, we partnered with them to launch a spiked version of it. So this is a Mexican mineral water. Yes, it started out in Mexico, but it's so cool, it's so authentic, it's hip, that it's actually become very mainstream. So exactly to your point, like, there's so much we can be learning from Latino culture, because it's actually what consumers are seeking out.
It's like being hip in a way, that you're applying in your...
Totally.
No, just on the marketing piece, I think that part of the goal, or part of what I would love to see, is when and how do companies and people like you start looking more at Latinos in front of camera, behind the camera, more.
Totally, yeah. I mean, part of what we've been doing in the last number of years is we've actually, just like we have mandated, like, within our own diversity recruiting and retaining efforts, like, we want to have a certain number of people of color. Obviously, Latinos is one of them. Actually, part of it is the same with our agency partners too. We challenge them, and part of them working with us is to make sure that they have a certain percentage of people in leadership positions that come from diverse backgrounds. And that's really, really important. It can't just be like someone that we're not really interacting with. They have to be people in leadership positions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I dream of that day, I have to say.
Yeah.
I dream of the day not only to see Mexican restaurants in every corner, but see Latino models and Latino actors and Latino, like, directors and more of that.
And it's like so important too, because if you go back to it, when agency partners are coming to us with creative ideas, if they don't have Latinos in their creative teams and their account teams, like, they're not going to bring relevant ideas, like, period. Yeah. And like, that's just it. And so actually, like, some of the best agency partners we've worked with are the ones that have strong leaders that are Latinos who understand and really push that way.
What's your approach to like developing campaigns? Do you have a main agency and a Latino agency, or do you have an agency that has Latino employees that can have a point of view?
Both. And it's funny because now I know Alma's going to be listening to this. So we work with many great agencies. And so you have to imagine we have a lot of different brands. So it's smart for us to have a diverse roster of agencies, partners. We've gotten to a point that they've become nicely curated. And so we feel really great about them. They're, DDB, Droga 5, Mischief, Rethink, like some of the best agencies that we have. And then as part of DDB, Alma and they're one of the top Latino agencies. So it's interesting that you asked that question, because within the agencies, I would say all of them definitely have Latino creatives, Latino people, working on their account side. Alma is a specific Latino-focused agency, although they would push and they'd say, we're no longer a specific Latino agency. We're an all-market agency, because they've also flipped it, because this is what the U.S. has become. And now at the same time, though, like, they're masters in terms of, like, whenever we are launching a major campaign, and then we're thinking about, like, embedding Latino insights and making sure the Latino is, like, the Latino creative is really strong, we always partner with the Alma team. I would also say that some of the best work that we have, that isn't necessarily Latino stereotypically driven also comes from Alma, just because it's like, this is where the U.S. is going. So, and that's really important.
And this is an ad for Alma.
Yeah,
we'll
exactly. I'm like, Isaac, you better be happy with this.
But we had the same, when I was working at Walmart, we had a Latino agency that in the beginning would basically get the script that our mainstream agency would create and was tasked with just make this Latino. So if it's a family having dinner, just replace the burger and put a taco. And we saw it evolving to coming up with original ideas for the mass market.
Correct. And so that's, I mean, at a minimum, what we do now, and like, again, you have to imagine some of the big brands. We have Coors Light, Miller Lite, Blue Moon. At a minimum, like, we have Alma partner from the get-go with the other agency of record so that it's a true collaboration, so it doesn't feel like an add-on. Sometimes it's just Alma doing it on their own for everyone. So it kind of depends.
And how is your team structured? So you have a perspective from any diverse group. When you approve marketing, when you approve any materials, I feel like if you don't have somebody that belongs and that has a good understanding of how it feels to see something from your point of view, you can just push out or like publish marketing campaigns like the Kylie Jenner, Pepsi, you know. So how do you make sure that you have representation too?
Yeah, so look, at a starting point, we try very hard within marketing that we have a diverse group of marketers, and we try to make sure that they're on different parts of the team. Also, we work with agency partners who help us too, and they have diversity. But on top of it, we have within Molson Coors almost like a council that we bring in diverse opinions.
We do the same,
Yeah, we bring in, and it's super powerful. We bring in diverse people from all across the organization that represent, you know, all different ethnicities, backgrounds, and something rural, you know, like different, like Latinos, Black consumers, LGBTQ+, and they really work as a sounding board for us to make sure that we're being really thoughtful and diverse about things. And so that's something that we've had it for a number of years, and I can tell you we're so happy we have it because it has definitely been a powerful asset for us.
We had the same at Walmart, and I think that every Latino employee should feel almost responsible for whatever their company is putting out there. And if they're putting something that's insensitive to Latinos, even if you're not in marketing, you should feel like you can go and speak about it.
Totally. So we have that council, and then we also have employee resource groups. So we have our Latino employee resource group called Salud, which obviously is a pun with us working in a beverage company. Salud. And we'll go to them. So sometimes if we want to vet something, we'll go to them. Now, we have to be careful because we also don't want Salud, the people on that team, to suddenly become translators for us. And you have to be respectful of that too. So we need to make sure that we're investing and putting the right resources to do things right. And then, you know, actually like leverage these human beings the way we should. And so that's like a slippery slope we don't want to go down.
But I think that for marketing, I've seen most companies that do have an ERG or BRG that is a filter and you know, like in a way a good sounding board that have very powerful results. Two more questions on the industry, and then I would love to talk to you about you again and identity and so on. Number one, it is really an incredible honor and a great achievement for you to be the chief marketing officer of North America of such a big company as a Latina. But it must be lonely out there because there's not enough Latinos in marketing or enough Latinas in marketing. And given that we're so creative, it should be an area where we are there. What do you think happens, and what would be a dream for you to have like a network of peers? Like, how do we get there? Or maybe you don't feel that lonely.
No, I feel very lonely. Like, as a starting point, that was actually one of the biggest shocks to me when I got into this role. And, you know, that kind of people say it's lonely at the top. It is because, and not just, and again, I love what I'm doing. I'm fortunate. I worked hard to get here, so I deserve it. But at the same time, it's tricky because all of a sudden you feel like everything you say is going to impact people. And so you don't have the same kind of alliances and people that you could commiserate with because all of a sudden now they report into you. And so you have to be very thoughtful about those things. And so, you know, to be able to have a network of people that you can talk to is awesome. So, I mean, number one, what you guys are doing at A La Latina is awesome because I've been listening to some of the podcasts and like it is really valuable. Like, I was listening to one with Marisa Solis, who was at PepsiCo, and I still remember she kind of was I was dotted line to her for a while in my last role there. And I thought she was amazing. And I ran into her at a Dallas Cowboy game late last year. And I said to her, I was like, hey, and it was, so cool to suddenly be in the role I'm in and to see her who she's done amazing things in the NFL and to know that like we came from the same place, like that's, it's just like such a great feeling. And so I think as a starting point, what you are doing, creating this network is really powerful. And look, and like for myself, like I see it, like when I meet women, like the president of DDB, who's a Venezuelan lady who's awesome, Andrea, you just feel that connection. Like you just like, there's a certain kind of warmth and directness and like
shared experiences.
There's another woman, Alejandra, who lives in the North Shore of Chicago, and she's a chief marketing officer at a bank, so she should definitely come here.
That's what recommendations, right?
And I remember a couple of years ago, I met her, and she's about, just 9-10 years older than me, also 2 sons, but, further along in life. And I met her and she's from Argentina. I felt like I had met like a cousin, a prima. I'm like, I feel like we're so similar because of those shared experiences. And then seeing her in this like role and she's gone through it, it's humongous, and then also not just as a CMO, but then also as a mom, as a Latina, navigating the workforce, it's really important.
Mm-hmm. We need more. I want to understand how do we get more marketers, Latina marketers, into the chief marketing officer. And I just wonder what is the barrier that we don't seem to have, whether it's like getting into those professions.
I also do think, and it goes for Latinas, it goes for a lot of women. I mean, like, it's always tricky continuing to rise up and then navigating having kids. And then, it does start with making sure that you have the right support at home and that you can handle it. And so like, that's a big one when I think about it. In my case, like my husband's super career driven as well. But even when I took on this role a year ago, like there was a bit of a shift that we had to be okay with. Like for years and years, I think I was carrying more of that mental load. Like they talk about that all the time with women being the ones that are like, oh, like I have to remember to organize this activity and do this. And I was constantly that person on all the text threads. In the last year, like Jonathan has risen more to that. And if I'm honest, I don't know if that's always going to be the case. And I think that's going to be a barrier for people. And so, I don't know if we change society in that case, but it is about, I tell like the women that I work with, when they feel guilty about having to travel. And first of all, like I always say like your family comes first, your personal life comes first. But I will push and say, hey, don't feel guilty about your husband taking care of the kids. He's a parent. They're not babysitting. Like it's a co-responsibility.
But also when people feel guilty, we're gonna play them your script.
Correct.
The way that you describe your mom who was working and yet you admire her and yet you feel her presence. And so let's forget about the present guilt and remember that our example leads.
Exactly. But I think many of us are like you in a city where we don't have family.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very easy. Like I see many of my peers, if they need something, their mom will come.
Yeah.
My peers, I mean, that are not immigrants.
Yeah.
And whenever I have to do something, it's like I have to hire somebody.
Me too.
If my husband can't do it. And it's good to see that it can be done and that you can balance between what you do and what your husband does.
We can do it. I mean, but we are hanging on by like
I know.
No, and I say it because I think it's also important to not like pretend that it's easy. Like we're like, because sometimes we'll look at each other and say, oh my God, our life is crazy. Yeah. But you take a deep breath and then
Tranquila.
Tranquila.
Break things out into steps.
Break things out into steps.
Yes. And if you could be talking to young Latinas that want to follow your example and are thinking of the industry, marketing, creative, communications, what would you tell them?
Yeah, look, there's a number of things, I think, going back to the conversation we had. First, like, find something that you like, but also find something that has ample career opportunities, where if you work hard and you work hard and you go for it and you push and you take those opportunities, that you're going to have a chance to succeed. Because I think like what I would hate to see someone do, and I've mentored and I've talked to different young Latinas, is that they are very hungry, but then they start going and in directions where there aren't as many opportunities. And so I want people to get those opportunities. So as a starting point, find careers and find paths where you can actually expand, where there's like opportunities to rise up, where you're going to get, valuable skills and valuable things that you can actually continue to rise up. So I would say that.
Can I double click on that?
Of course.
How do we know which careers will have potential and which ones will not?
The advice I always give is get out there and talk, like meet different people, listen to podcasts, go if you're in college, university, go to career fairs. Like, if my parents, like, they were not in marketing, like my parents, like, as much as like they were my earlier influencers in life, they don't really, like, they didn't tell me to go down this direction. Like when I was in university in Canada, I went to the career fairs, I did an internship, I took every opportunity I could. So that would be, again, the other advice to the people that I would say is don't think that something is too small initially. Go for it, because every different experience is only going to build up your resume and make you even more qualified. And then you're going to learn, and you're going to learn what you like, what you don't like, and you're going to be able to be connected to different people who can then become coaches and mentors and people you can learn from. So I think it's like, it is very important. And even, I don't know, like a couple of weeks ago, someone from, the media industry who I had met, wonderful woman, she called to ask me advice, which I felt bad because I said, I don't know enough about your industry to tell you specifically which way to go. But here's what I would do if I were in your situation. Like, I would start networking and understanding what are the different, 3 places that I would want to go and be in 5 years from now, and then work backwards to figure out how am I going to get there. So it is like, you have to do the work to get there.
And I think that for marketing is quite interesting to get involved in AI and things that are probably gonna, be there for 10 years, so that instead of thinking that it could replace your work, talking about Marisa Solis, she has like an entire workforce that is AI based, and how are they, engaging?
Absolutely. Like the way we look at it, and look, like, I am not an expert in those things, but if I look at media, digital, performance marketing, I surround myself, like some of the people that are leading those teams are super smart, they're super capable, and they're constantly pushing the boundaries on the things that we can be doing. And we're testing and we're going into different spaces. And we're testing out AI now. We're being very careful about it, right? We're making sure that it's additive to what we're working on. We're ensuring that we're complying by the policies that we've set out to do. But you have to be curious and you have to take these experiments. And then also, if you don't necessarily know about it yourself, like, learn, read about it, surround yourself with people who know more about it than you do.
Also, people that say that they're experts in AI, they're probably lying.
No, they're lying. No one is.
Right?
No one is.
We're all figuring it out.
Totally, yeah.
But again, you are in an incredibly big company, C-suite, and we would love to talk about how being a Latina has been in your career. And again, we understand that you didn't at the beginning, feel, can I claim this? Should I play it? How much? And so on. But did you have to dial down at some point?
Because you could hide it well, probably, right? Because you didn't have an accent.
Oh, totally. 100% I could hide it well. And I think that, it's interesting. Since I came to PepsiCo, like in the US, it was probably more of a question of, do I hide it or not? Because in Canada, it wasn't as relevant.
It's expected that you're diverse.
Yeah, it's expected that you're diverse in Canada, it just is. Whereas it's different here, right? And I think I look at even Molson Coors and I look at the way it operates. Like, I don't know how familiar you are with the beer industry, but I remember even like when I was leaving PepsiCo, someone said to me, like, hey, like a mentor of mine in HR, he goes, are you sure you want to go to the beer industry? Because there was a lot of stereotypes about it being kind of sexist, and especially to women. And then if on top of it, to a Latina woman, like, it could actually be a big disadvantage. And so I think, like, even when I came to Molson Coors, it was one of those decisions in terms of how much do you talk about it? And I think, I realized, go all in and be yourself and own it, And I think even like as I navigated the distributor network, one of those things is like they're men who have been in the beer industry for a long time. And the cool thing that I've realized is they're businessmen who actually understand that the consumer demographics are changing so rapidly in the US. And so they're actually welcoming the idea of someone who can connect and better understand Latinos. And so it's actually been a big benefit, and to own it rather than try to hide it. And then what I try to say to younger Latinas in the organization is, don't run away from it, like own it, because it's actually an incredible power and resource that you bring.
And the own it looks like if you're like a hugger, you go and hug at occasions, or what is owning it and in a senior level?
Owning it in a senior level is like, for instance, like when you feel you're in the C-suite and there's discussions about, I'll even say it, like we were at a board meeting a couple of months ago, and I think we were getting challenged and pushed on some of the strategies we had, and they were specifically like in regard to Latinos. And I think that's when I could be like, well, actually, I do have some level of experience and understanding here, and not being afraid to, give the rationale to why, because like, owning the fact that you do have that background. So that's one piece of it. I think the second piece of owning it is owning the characteristics that come with maybe, like we talked about, like being more emotional, being a little bit more passionate, right? Another thing that I was thinking about too is maybe being a little bit more informal. And that's okay, because that's actually helping you build those relationships. And I think that like, it's interesting because it just so happens that in my world, those things are all really beneficial, but in other industries, it might be tougher. So I think that's also going back to picking the right industries that, where some of these characteristics are actually going to help you out.
I mean, I do think that the beer industry could be very male. I mean, at least in my image.
It's very male oriented. And I think, though, again, it goes back to and there are stories of the past where maybe it wasn't as friendly towards female leaders. Mm-hmm. I have not experienced that. And I will say there were probably other females that definitely opened up the doors and broke some of those barriers down. But I think part of it goes back to like some of the qualities that we can bring as Latinas is a certain level of like humbleness, eager to learn. And then when you have that, you can actually demonstrate that like that gives you credibility rather than trying to prove yourself, instead being like, let's just work together on this. And that actually brings you even more credibility.
You've been speaking a lot about what it means to be a Latina. Have you any other thought on those characteristics that comes from our cultural values that are normally seen as negative that could be pushed into positive, and one way in which people can flip the script, turn it around?
The other one that I would say, like flipping the script and turning it around, is this idea of the importance of family and warmth and connections. When I was growing up, going back to it, like, yes, I had a mother who worked, but also like I did understand the importance of, having a mom who like was with me, and I felt that connection. And so as a leader and as a mother of two boys, like one of the things that I've tried to flip the script on is like being very vulnerable and open about the hard times I have and the guilt that comes with being a working parent. Yeah. And letting other people know it's okay too. So for instance, like some of the things that I try to do is I try to be very open about the days that I take off to go be a like mystery reader in my son's class. And I think years ago we would have felt,
what is mystery reader?
You show up, it's like they have it on a Tuesday afternoon. What parent is going to come into the class and read, And I think but it goes back to it. I think maybe in the past, or like there could be a stereotype of, well, they're too family oriented and they're not like taking their career seriously enough, not committed enough. And like, you know what? That's BS, because I'd rather the working parents, not just mothers, fathers too, feel that at Molson Coors, we support. If you need to go and spend some time with your kids, please do it, because guess what? We know you're probably working at night after you put your kids to bed. And I say all of this, I'm not always the best at it too. I actually have a tremendous amount of respect for the moms that are the classroom moms that are not always working and they're always there. And I'm very grateful for them, because I can't do that. So I'm trying my best. And what I want to make sure the team understands is that they are welcome to do the same thing. But I think that's a good example of flipping the script, of saying you can have a thriving career and you can also care about your family too and prioritize that.
I think it's great that you're like comfortable being vulnerable. I try to be like that also as a leader. Let me ask you, if you could go back to your 30-year-old self, and you could give yourself some advice, anything you would do differently, anything you would like to tell that Sofia Colucci? What were you, 30? You were in Canada working in sausages.
I had just come to PepsiCo.
Okay.
By the way, I started in sausages and then I went to bacon. So you got it right. I elevated myself up the packaged meat world.
Is better.
Bacon's bigger than sausages.
Okay,
even
so
though
there's levels. In the packaged meats, there's levels, and sausage is at the bottom.
Well, actually, no. Snack meats are at the bottom. So.
Yes. Okay, so I'll never take that job, and I'll never eat a snack meat. I don't even know what that is.
No, actually, you know what? At 30, I had just gone to PepsiCo in Canada, and I think I was always extremely hard on myself. Like I still am, and it's funny because being so hard on myself has led me to where I am today. But at the same time, there's probably a lot of pain that I could have avoided if I had just been kinder to myself. So this goes back to a little bit what we talked about. Tranquila. This is a little bit about not stopping the hustle, not stopping the push, but not letting it eat you up and figuring out a way to work hard, but know it's going to turn out right. And so I wish I could go back in time and tell myself that. I can't. And so now, look, I'm 43 years old. So I think, if anything, I've decided, what would my 55-year-old self tell me? What could I tell myself? Or, by the way, what could I tell 30-year-olds? And I think for me, the things I'm struggling with now, honestly, are probably like career-wise, yes, but honestly, it's navigating being a working parent and that guilt that comes, right? And I'm constantly, the thing that I worry about all the time is, are my kids happy? Are they doing okay? Why didn't they get invited to that play date? Are they going to be okay? And so, again, this goes back to, how do I tell myself, hey, guess what? In 10 years, 15 years, they're going to be okay. Tranquila.
Yeah.
But I do want to ask the Sophia, 55 years old, to tell us, what would you have told the Sophia 43 years old?
Should we book it in 17 years? No, 12 years.
I mean,
can't add.
I think the number one thing that I probably would have told myself is, enjoy the ride. Enjoy this moment. Because what you have right now is incredible. So, and that's something that this year I'm trying to do, even...
Give me
but enjoy it, because how incredible this opportunity I have to work with the people I get to work with, to the type of work I get, to even sit here and
to be the poster child of millions of Latinas.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's just it is I have to pinch myself. I don't think if I told 30-year-old Sophia that I would one day be in New York, talking to the two of you, beyond my wildest dreams, right? So I think it's a little bit of actually enjoying it and saying how amazing is this, and then giving back and saying how can I then help other people, inspire other people, help coach them, help navigate them. And so it starts with the people in our marketing team. It starts with then the people in Molson Coors, and then honestly a lot of other young Latinas who, if I can help, I'm happy to.
And I think that that's what gives me an incredible amount of hope, and not only optimism, but possibilism, because I know it's possible, because I hear every time more and more, not only that we're more united, more proud to be Latinos, but also more willing to give back, more willing to turn down and say, I'll take time so that the next gen can do it in half the time. And it's really encouraging to hear more and more Latinas that are in that ride. So therefore, I feel that, everything is possible for us.
Yeah. And I mean, there's amazing, some of the, I've been connected to some incredible young Latinas. And I think to myself, there's this one woman, she's in Toronto. And I go, I was never as accomplished as you, or just as smart and, just understanding and, knowing the world. And so my push to her, and as I've given her career advice, is go for it. Set yourself up high. You can do this, because it's the bar is people are getting stronger and stronger. So it's our job to help them out.
And as you said, careers are long, so enjoy the ride while we're here. So you started dropping names about who are inspiring you. Who else shall we have here in this chair sharing their knowledge that you admire?
All right, I can give you two people off the bat. Latinas. Okay, first one, and I'm going to make her listen to it. Her name is Andrea Vigues. She is from Venezuela. She is I want to say, president or CEO of GUT Global, which is an incredible agency that they've won a bunch of awards. I worked with her personally, I don't know, a year and a half ago when she was president of DDB Chicago. And she's just one of those powerful, but at the same time, down to earth and direct leaders. I love her. I cried when she left DDB Chicago. And so I still keep in contact with her. So you need to have her on the show.
Right.
She's awesome.
Okay.
Another person that I would say is Alejandra Denda. She is a CMO at, I think I want to call it Federal Savings Bank. And she's also a Northwestern professor in marketing. And I met her in the North Shore of Chicago. And she's brilliant and super strategic. And she's actually someone who, as I've navigated my work life, like she has given me a ton of advice. So I joke, and it's funny, I went to speak in one of her classrooms, and it just so happened my parents were visiting from Canada, and they came and watched. And then I introduced them, and it kind of felt like we were all family because of the connection there. So it was really cool.
So I am feeling a lot of good vibes for Chicago. I think that what we should do is host with Sophia a dinner in Chicago
I
of
would love
incredible
that.
Latinas
Yeah.
that are willing to give back and that want to bring other Latinas, younger Latinas, to tell them about their experiences.
That would be amazing.
We're doing something like that in New York, and we're
cool.
going to start going around the country doing dinners, salons, and network.
Yeah, we got to do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, that's the next stop.
Next stop, Chicago.
And we'll drink Topo Chico hard seltzer.
Yes,
With some sotol. It's like a liquid dinner. Let's do it, a liquid dinner. Sofia Colucci, what an incredible pleasure having you today.
Thank you for giving us so many tips, actionable advice. It was great.
And you inspired us to lead
A la Latina.